Hi, I'm Dmae Roberts, moderating a panel for Matter. I'm a biracial Asian American and the executive producer of MediaRites, which is a multimedia and multicultural nonprofit arts production organization. I'm here with Charles Grant, James Dixon, and Tamera Lyn from Matter, a filmed theater piece written and performed by Charles Grant. The film is a co-production of Many Hats Collaboration and Portland Playhouse, and it will be live streamed on both websites on September 25th through October 1st. Also with us is artist and activist Fyndi, Jermany, a board member of Don't Shoot PDX. It's a Black-led human rights nonprofit that advocates for accountability and does much needed, important work in our community. So Matter is being offered free with encouragement to donate to Don't Shoot PDX. So I'd like to start off with each of you introducing yourselves and to say a little bit about what your connection is to this film theater piece and or Don't Shoot PDX. Would you start, Charles, since this is your baby, you know?
Yes, thank you, Dmae. My name is Charles Grant. I'm an actor, writer, according to this piece, which is very new and exciting, and a producer. And I originally conceived this idea back in 2017, and now in 2020, I call it Matter 2.0, because sadly, it is still part of the conversation. And so that's my connection to the piece, and I'm very grateful to everyone here in this room. Thank you.
James, you're the director of this piece.
Yes, James Dixon. I'm a local actor, director, and I guess I'm a playwright now as well. I can add that to the checklist. And yeah, I was very excited to hear that Charles was wanting a Black director to work on this piece, and he reached out to me directly, and I read it, and I was like, well, let's do it. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here. I'm really happy to be part of this project.
And you had a previous relationship in Booty Candy, which was phenomenal. You know?
Correct.
Yeah.
This is our second time working together, and Tamera and I have acted together, but it's my first time working with Tamera as a videographer, which is pretty awesome. So, and Fyndi, thank you so much for being here today. It's really great to see you here.
So Tamera, filmmaker, actress, tell us about your connection to Matter.
Hi, I'm Tamera Lyn, videographer and editor for Matter 2.0. And I was in the trenches with Charles during the apprenticeship years, so I got to see the first version of it and to watch it grow from now 2020. So being a part of that, very grateful that he called upon me, and very grateful. It felt like a very full circle moment for that piece. So I'm just excited to see people see it. And yeah, I'm a local actress in town. Have worked with James, worked with Charles, have worked with you, Dmae. You were my first production that I worked on here in Portland. So, and I'm still reading Octavia Butler books today. So I appreciate that.
Oh, that's so wonderful. I'm glad you're still reading her work. It's so pertinent, and it just, yeah. Anyway, so Fyndi, tell us about some of the work that you've been doing with Don't Shoot PDX, and also as a board member as well.
Oh, as a board member, work I've been doing, it's a lot, you know? We're like strategizing like this new normal, or normal, what is even that, right? What is even that? It's interesting. I was just speaking to someone last night about like clocking in with the idea of work, right? And then like clocking in and clocking out. And then like when you're like literally dedicating your life to something, it's really like, not real. It's a clock in and clock out because you have to take care of yourself, but it's also like, it's different, you know? It's definitely different, but we've been providing like legal services. I've been stepping in with that on various forms, supplies for people in need, PPE, protesters, people in need, indigenous groups, people affected by domestic violence, community violence. It's a lot of good work. Like it's a lot of human rights work, right? Because we're a human rights organization. And it's interesting to just think about the idea of just humans in general, right? Because humans are such an interesting species. We like don't have it all together. We're like really striving, but we're getting there slowly but surely, you know. But we're definitely an interesting species. I did want to speak to so Fyndi, hello everyone. Artist, I've been owning that more a lot lately, and that's a part of my liberatory experience, because what's important, and it's important for us all to think about how trauma connects us, and it's a bizarre thing, you know, but it does. And so yes, Fyndi, artist, creative. This piece connected with me because it speaks to like this idea in culture, you know, one, poverty, experience.
Yes.
Yeah, this is my life. Okay. Violence, the exposure to violence, right? The and to certain degrees, the desensitization to violence to some degree, right? But, and I'm sure we'll talk to this more so later. Yes. Okay. Charles, thank you. Everyone, thank you. Thank y'all for having me here again. Sorry, I'm a scatterbrain talker, so.
No, Charles, you felt very strongly about having Don't Shoot PDX as a community partner. Can you tell us why?
Yes, I mean, listen, I'm a person who is about action. And right now, especially, I feel like there's a lot of talking, like one thing that I'm thinking about right now is when everything went down in May with George Floyd, and then just finding about everyone else that happened in the beginning of the year, and everyone releasing statements, right? And we just saw statement after statement of like, yes, I stand with Black lives, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm like, okay, but what are the action steps? What are the action plans? Because we can talk all day and long, we can have all the Zoom meetings and calls about it, but like, what are we gonna actually do so that I don't have to remount this piece next year, so that we can finally stop talking about it, you know what I mean? And so, and it was important for me that it be local too, because it is a national conversation, but sometimes it can feel so big. And so I was like, well, I'm in Portland, Oregon. What can I do right here in our community? Because our community is affected by it too. You know what I mean? It's happening all over. And so I looked into Don't Shoot PDX, and I was just like, oh, this is exactly in line with like what I want to be aligned with, what I want this piece to be aligned with, and that the two of us as a production and an organization can be in conversation with each other, so that once everyone views it, it's not just, oh, that was a nice piece, but what are we going to do now, right? I hope that the piece does inspire people to take action. And I think Don't Shoot is a great resource for people who don't know where to start. You know what I mean? So thank you, Fyndi, for all that y'all are doing.
Damn, thank you for, you know, giving it great energy. Can I insert?
Of course.
So thank you very much for that, because I realized, so when I got involved with Don't Shoot, seeking advocacy, honestly, I was like transitioning, right? And I started seeing apparently what had these protests, these people in masses together in solidarity, right? In various forms. You can protest in various forms. I also want to like put that, right? You can, right, you know, so there's very different ways to do that. And so I realized that it became trendy recently for me. That's why I say almost like became trendy. You mentioned that everyone had a statement, right? Like everyone wanted to let people know like Black Lives Matter too, because it was a key conversation right now, right? School districts, corporations, like, you know, everyone wanted to make that message, but I also experienced witnessing people take down their signs, or change the statement, or update the screen, whatever the case may be. So this idea that like people are stepping on, or it's propaganda. You know, it's continuing to be just propaganda. So yeah, I just wanted to comment on that. Yeah.
I love that you said that, Fyndi, because it really is like the way that I've seen people silence their voices in regards to Black lives just in the past few weeks. Like it was going strong in June. In July, it was like, all right. And now it's just like like you're saying, it's such a difference. And I think for a lot of people, it was just that moment or checkbox, we're done. And to reiterate, it is so much more complicated than that. This is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a month. You know what I mean? So we have to continue to give it an energy. And I love the phrase that, you know, it's a marathon, not a race. We got to pace ourselves. And I love that you spoke to that too, Fyndi, about like, how do we take care of ourselves as well? Because this is not going to be over tomorrow. You know what I mean? So how do we keep doing the work, keep giving it the energy it needs, but also to take care of ourselves?
Charles, I liked what you said, because you wrote this piece originally in 2018, right? Or was it 2 years ago?
2017.
2017.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something very telling. You said, I don't want to have to do this piece again after this.
Yes.
Right? Can you tell us about the exact moment when you decided to create this piece?
Yeah, it's such a good like segue from what we're just talking about like care. So caring for yourself. Back in 2017, as part of the Portland Playhouse apprenticeship, I was an acting apprentice there in season 9, 2016 to 2017. And as part of the end of our apprenticeship, we all do solo shows. So for about a few months, every week, we have a prompt that's given to us, and we just make a piece in response to that. And it's also worth noting that during this spring, that was the spring that Jordan Edwards, who was 15 at the time, was shot. And so that was happening. I mean, it seems like this is happening all the time. So you could pick any point in time and name somebody, you know what I mean? But it was that thing where in that moment, I was like, I noticed that, okay, I was wanting to write a piece that was like so far from that in the beginning, when I was just like, what do I want to say for my solo show? What do I want to use my vessel to put out into the world? And the funny thing is, I found that no matter what happened with each prompt I was given, with each assignment, with each piece I was creating, it kept coming back to this gun violence and police brutality. And so it was in that moment where I said, you know what? Instead of running from this, I clearly need to I have some processing I need to do. I'm going to face it head on. And to me, it speaks to this conversation too, which I was having then, and I was having again now in Matter 2.0 of like worth, right? And like, am I worthy to speak to this? Who am I to tell this story, to bring up this topic? And so I think back in 2017, I was struggling with that too. But you know what I said? You know, we all have lanes in the revolution. You know, I think someone was speaking to that earlier of like, if I'm not out there protesting, or this is what I can do. I can use my art to say something. So I'm going to put my feelings to the side as much as I can, my feelings of inadequacy or not worth, and like speak, do, take action, use my physical body to do something. So I embraced it. I said, you know what, I'm going to talk about this. And so then it was a matter of like, how do I talk about this? Because I don't want it to be trauma porn. I don't want it to just be this thing where people can come and say, oh yes, I did my duty. I went and saw this show about Black Lives Matter. You know, I want it to be this thing where people are going to have conversations about it, and then you're going to take action, right? That the piece will move you so that you have to do something. So yeah, and then again, I was approached this year in 2020 by Jessica in June, Jessica Wallenfels of Many Hats Collaboration, asking me if I wanted to remount it. And so then again, it was that process of like, oh my goodness, like this feels so fresh and like raw, and like, I don't know if I want to do it. But again, my lane in the current revolution is like, I am an artist, and I feel a duty to speak to it, no matter how hard it can be. And I know that's not true for everyone. And even in the process, like, you know, Tamera, James, and Jessica will tell you, I had a meltdown or two. You know, it is hard stuff. It's kind of what you're saying, Fyndi, about how do you clock in and clock out? And you kind of can't. Like, even when rehearsal's over, we do our little checkout, but I'm like, I'm going home, and I'm like, it's just always on the mind. So I'm grateful for the avenue of art to get to like deal with it and talk, but yeah, I'm also grateful for spaces like this to process and take care of each other and figure out what are we gonna do.
I can't imagine that it was easy to do even in pre-COVID, you know, situations, right? Rehearsal process and creation. James, when you saw, you know, the script and you started thinking about how to direct this piece, what were some of the challenges both emotionally, but also with, you know, COVID-19 precautions? What were your challenges?
Well, that's a really great question. I had no idea what to expect with the COVID situation. I just knew that this piece needed to happen. And I relied on my producer to let me know how we're taking care of safety. But ultimately, when I look at a piece like this, I'm thinking about personal safety. I'm thinking about cultural safety on some end, you know, like Charles said, you know, like the last thing I want is trauma porn. We don't need, you know, we don't need to see blood. We don't need it. There's not a single Black child in America that doesn't know what it looks like to see a dead Black man on the TV screen, because we've all seen it. And if we haven't seen it, then we're living in a very, very, very tight vacuum. There's not a single Black mother that hasn't given their child the talk about how to talk to police officers. My mother did that when I was 12 years old. And she said, if you want what they want, you do what they do. When a police officer comes up, you do what they say. When most white women talk to their kids about police officers, they're telling them to be nice. Then I tell you know that it's a whole nother way of living, you know. So, and when you look at this one single Black body, and we think about how weaponized we are as Black folks on screen, or how weaponized women are on TV, when we see these bodies, we have to think about the gravity of that, and what story we're wanting to tell, and whether now is the time we want to do that, our intentions are, and what the impact is that we're looking to achieve is going to be. So that all goes into it as well. So I said, yeah, let's do it. I feel like that was long and drawn out, but
No, but
so my brain works.
you really had to, it was good that it was a solo piece so you could keep social distancing, right?
Yes. Otherwise I would have probably, I don't know. I just like, oh, one person easy. We can keep our distance, you know. But there's also some methods where we need people to be close. So like, you know, if we were using more people, well, can we wear masks? Can we put up masks into the work? And so, I mean, I remember Charles saying something about the words of the play, like every little piece has to serve a purpose. So, and then that includes what we put on stage. And so that was a large part of it too. I was like, are we wearing masks? What's the space going to be like? You know, do we need it? You know, it's just a whole lot of things go into that.
And I know with all the theaters, they've had to do incredible cleaning protocols, you know, and it is such an important thing that, you know, for the safety of the artists, you know, in the space, because it's still very scary. You're dealing with a scary piece, but you're also dealing with a scary time of getting sick.
Right, but we still got, you know, tens of thousands of folks, hundreds of thousands of folks across the country out there protesting every night. So, you know, I personally don't do that. I have PTSD, I have asthma. I'm a person that believes in a gun, you know, having a gun to protect yourself at home. You know, I'm one of those folks. My gun isn't needed out of the protest. My Black skin isn't needed out of the protest surrounded by white people. It terrifies me to think about it, you know. And for those that want to get out there and do it, by all means, please go out there and do that. But this is how I choose to protest. And there's got to be some gravity for that. You know, people put their lives on the line every day just to go out there to make sure that we're supporting Black lives, not just the Black lives that are out in the world, but the Black lives that are there on the ground. I have a friend who's white and queer who has gay friends who are just like, well, you're always on this Black lives thing. And it's like, well, yeah, the urgency is now. And this man's been out there every night, making sure folks got respirators out there, making sure he's engaging with his folks at home. And that is what I'm hoping that people will take from something like this. It's going to be hard to watch, but what do we take home with that? How do we talk to our families? And how do we talk about these racist statements, these anti-racism statements that companies are putting up? What policies are they putting in place? What changes are we doing? Are we voting as we're going down to protest? These are all conversations I'm hoping that folks can have after watching a piece like this.
Fyndi, did you have something you wanted to say? Because I saw you.
Yeah, my mind was just going on when he was talking. I was like, yeah. Okay, God, now I have to backtrack. I took a note over here or something.
Well, you saw the film.
Yes.
The raw film. I just wanted to say, Tamera, that I thought what you did was amazing with filming it. I love the handheld techniques that you brought in. It had a real documentary feel to it that I really appreciated.
And I just wanted to do a shout out for you. It's not easy to film during this time because I've been trying to do that myself. You want to talk about that a little bit? And then I want to ask Fyndi about her response to seeing the rough cut that we watched.
Well, thank you. Thanks for watching. Thanks for enjoying it. Filming, yeah, it was tricky because it's like a sport. It's like a workout. I was very hot under that mask. I was so frustrated. I was like, why is there a pandemic happening? I'm trying to get close to this man, and I'm trying to like have these movements and try not to breathe too hard. But that was like the joy in it, and really, it was a test of a skill. That's a new skill that I can say. I can film with a mask on, and it's hard to breathe. But it kind of like tied into the world of which Charles was talking about, that inability to be able to breathe and catch your breath, but you're trying to fight for something. So some nights I was frustrated because of that, and it was more so of the Black Lives Matters not being able to breathe, and it was like a weird tie-in that I found myself in some days. But the filming process, it was really, really cool. The handheld, yeah, that was my idea of like, we're dropped into this world of this man, and it is kind of like a documentary, but then he's talking to us. So now we need to be a little bit still and further back. But then when he's breaking down, how close can we get and how much can we feel of him breaking down? So that's what I was hoping to capture within the piece. So thank you for watching it and digesting it.
I thought it was very powerful. I thought everything about it was very powerful. Fyndi, do you want to give us your response to Matter, the film theater piece?
Yeah, so I remember when Tamera started speaking, what triggered me when James was speaking, and honestly, what everyone is kind of like talking about, like you mentioned, we're in this pandemic, right? And I mean, in however so many years, 1,500, whatever, if the earth is even still existent, we're going to be like the bubonic plague for some generations, you know, like we're experiencing like this time where it's like this sickness, right? But like there are so many times in history where we can like reference when there was like an illness, when there was like genocide, when there was just like catastrophe within communities. Like humans want to take power over other humans in various forms, right? Or humans not helping humans in various ways. And this piece sat with me in various ways. And violence, as I mentioned earlier, is heavy. It's heavy on the heart, it's heavy on the soul, it's heavy on the spirit, right? But even in that same token, it's so normalized in various forms, right? So normalized. like sometimes I like giggle because I'm like listening to certain politicians say like we have to do this or we have to reform or whatever the case may be, but it's like we still like send people to war all the time, like all these just normalized violence, right? And gun violence in particularly, especially if you go up in certain communities in America, but also in other nations, right? Their gun violence is militarized, right? By their like literally like people who should be protecting them, right? So internationally, just globally, the invention of the gun was to oppress, right? Like it was to take power, control of some sort. And I mean, that goes deep, right? I mean, y'all can chime in with that if y'all want to. But
I can relate to that trauma because I'm going to age myself now, but when I was a young child, I remember the only Asians that were on TV were during the Vietnam War, and you would see all the footage of people being killed, you know, or airlifted or whatever, and it was just all violence. And so I agree that there is trauma being played out, you know, in the media, just in the way it's being covered, you know. So and having, you know, children having to experience that is just unforgivable, really, to watch that.
Can I speak in response to something you said, Fyndi, about how violence is becoming normalized? And the nuance of the piece that I wanted to write too was like, you know, we have gun violence by police, but like Ahmaud Arbery was not shot by police. You know what I mean? So it's starting to trickle down into like, now these other people in communities feel empowered to like, well, great, if they can do it, I can roll up on a Black person and gun them down too. You know what I mean? So it's becoming so normalized that like, it's not even just, you know, law enforcement that is doing this to us, but it's everybody, you know?
It's literally, sorry, I'm sorry, it's literally everybody, right? Because like that, and I like the idea. So yes, there is gun violence, right? There is people who do violence committed because of like racist acts, but then there's also like Black people who kill Black people. Like literally the violence, the core is the idea that this violence in my mental capacity is okay, you know? And it's social conditioned in various forms. Sorry, I got excited and then I lost my train of thought. Okay, so you mentioned earlier, Charles, like you not wanting to have to like make this, like do this play again, right? And then I think about that in a few different ways. Like one, what I'll use like the idea of like slavery, right? What like mainstream like what is it, like Hollywood portrays of like slavery. Like we're used to that story. Like we're used to like people playing those characters, right? And whatever that looks like in history. And so I was thinking not too long ago, it was like, when is it gonna stop, and will it? And is this just a part of our, like, is it a part of our human experience? Like, I don't want to believe that is true, you know? And so I'm happy that you said that, because it made me think like, we probably will, right? But what world do we have to create so that is not like the norm, right? That is not something that we have to talk about in the sense of like, here we go again, you know? So I'm happy that you had mentioned that. It was something that I pondered in my head when I was looking at the piece. But yes, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. James, there's a really claustrophobic feeling in watching Matter, and Charles and Tamera too. And I felt like the walls were closing in, you know? And I feel like that is such a metaphor for what we're going through right now as a society. And, you know, I would you like to speak to, you know, just that sense, those emotions that are experienced, because it's not exploited, it's very real and very claustrophobic. I just wanted to reiterate that that trauma is being represented so well.
Thanks for saying that, because that's what I was hoping for. I was like, how do we, is this a real space? Is this a fictitious space? And I thought of this space that this young man is in as this mental space that he's literally living in, that most of us, and not to take away from you, Dmae, but as a Black man, this is literally everything he's written on this paper. I was like, oh yeah, yeah. And even Fyndi can say that. Yeah, I know about that too. We know about it. This is creating that window into what we go through, on top of the fact that we're going through a pandemic. Now that we're in Oregon, I mean, we're practically barely surviving this smoke craziness that's out here. And then on top of that, we're going through social reform right now. And the gravity of the fact that if George Floyd had been a little more combative in that video, just a little more resistant, would we be having this conversation right now? Would we be having these protests worldwide? Because we're having folks, he was abiding by the police, he was doing his thing. Yeah, you know, Black Lives Matter. It literally takes that little bit of a perception for people to switch the way they think and switch the way they want to be involved in something like this. Something else I want to bring up is, you know, when we think about, Charles has a line that says, all Black Lives Matter. And so that's something that's been ringing for me a lot, you know, when we talk about checking in and checking out. I'm Black and I'm queer, you know, and in this work, I don't always get to show up Black and queer. I got to show up queer or I got to show up Black. And when it comes to this movement, and that's not to speak for Hands Up Don't Shoot or Black Lives Matter, but culturally speaking across the country, it's really hard for people to understand the gravity of not just Black Lives Matter, but that Black women are at risk, Black trans women are at risk, Black folks that have this skin tone, regardless of who they sleep with every day, are at risk. And a lot of those people are being left out of the conversation. And I think that's something that we have. That's more work. We don't just need white folks to do work. We need Black folks to do work too. We need everybody to do some work. We need everyone to be creating dialogue so that, you know, we're holding our Black women high, be they cis or trans. And I think that is also this trapped space that we're living in. I had a friend the other day, talking about leaving the country because they're out there. You got white folks out there with guns pulling people over right now, checking their IDs to make sure that they belong here. And what happens if they pull up if that someone looks like me, I'm out there in Malala trying to get pulled up. And they've normalized it. You've got videos of police officers saying that's okay. That is the world we're living in. Not just now. This has been happening for a long time. This is not new. So are we going to do this piece again? Someone else is going to do another iteration of it, but this conversation is ongoing.
Yeah, can I jump in? Oh Jesus, here I go. Oh, okay. So I was just sharing the other day about how I remember being younger and I was driving. I had just started driving and I was alone, and a truck pulled in front of me, a truck with two white individuals who happened to be men, and they started driving slower in front of me. And this is like something out of the movies at the time for me. They began driving slower in front of me, and they started like signaling me to pull over to the side of the road. And I remember I had got my license at that time. So I was probably like 18 years old. And so fast forward to now, me not realizing growing up in Oregon, the historical, like what happened here is historically, and my relationship with people who didn't look my same skin tone as me. I'm going to reference white, but that's a whole nother situation too, because it's not just white. Thinking about that in general, right? And it's something James just said, like triggered me to tell that story, because it's still happening in various forms, right? Now it's okay for their buddies to take control in some sort, I guess.
Pull people over and pouring guns at them. I mean, I remember seeing the video of them chasing that boy. Like, it's literally, I think I saw I've been watching Lovecraft recently, and there's a thing where they're going through the sundown town.
Yeah.
And I saw this visual of two men driving with another man on the back like that. And that is literally the exact same visual that we got out of that video before Ahmaud Arbery was killed. What Black folks can get in a pickup truck, even with my legal weapons I have, I wouldn't dare go out in public looking like that. That is some privilege on so many levels, and it makes no sense to me how that's normalized. And it makes no sense how I have to worry about, I leave rehearsal every night. I've got an extra light I've got extra lights for my car. My tags are up to snuff. My car is clean at all times. I've got my concealed carry permit if I want to carry my weapon. And all of that is just to make sure that I have a higher chance of making sure that I don't die when I get home every day. That's what I got to do. I set my cruise control before I drive. How many people can say they do that? And I know I'm not the only person that does that. Probably not the only person in this room that does that. That's got to change. We have to normalize these conversations around that impact.
Oh, I feel like I shouldn't even be in this conversation, you guys, because what you have to say is so friggin' important that, I just want whatever you want to say right now,
Well, I mean, I think you do belong in this room, Dmae, and I mean, we're talking about Black lives right now, but ultimately, it's late September. People have to get out there and vote. We're in the middle of a pandemic.
Yes.
There's nothing worse than walking to the grocery store and seeing people look at Asian folks differently because they're worried about whether they brought the virus over. Or, women walking down the street worrying about, I mean, has anyone had to vote on whether you can give birth in this country? Has anyone had to vote over whether, there's so many, it's not just Black folks right now. This is like we're talking about human rights right now. And it really, and I hate to go into politics, but, if you're voting for one or the other right now, you're literally voting to support racism.
Yes.
You're voting to support the death of folks. People are dying right now. This conversation is intersectional. If you can't see that, I don't know what to say. You know, like we have to be engaged in this, not just Black folks, but everybody's got to stay engaged in this conversation on how we can be better humans.
The idea of intersectionality with like racism, misogyny, patriarchy is all the rhetoric that is being like put out right now by the opposing parties, right? I think it's important to note that one of you had mentioned earlier, like we're in a social reform right now, like James, I think it was you, and the idea that literally the citizens have the authority and have the power to overthrow the government. We have the power to gain democracy, right? We're supposed to. We're supposed to. It's in the Constitution. And so even the idea and the rhetoric put into media or put in on the grounds of what is communicated when people, now everyone has their different ideologies, right? But when people decide to say, hey, what government, they're going down like that. And even them being labeled as a vigilante in a negative tone. Because you had mentioned something earlier about what the media does, and when you had mentioned that, it made me think of something I had learned in school about the mean world hypothesis, right? The media is going to frame it how they want to frame it for their audience, and a lot of time it's going to be this idea that like, oh, you can't go outside, take your kids outside, or oh, did you see the Black man on whatever? You know, it's this idea that like these things are continuously happening. Like if we learned great things on the news all the day, people would probably just be in a better place in their life. But oh, my daughter wants me to quiet it.
Well, as someone who has worked professionally in the media, you know, being public radio, just to give an example, it doesn't matter if the reporters are of color, because there are gatekeepers above the reporter, the editor, the people in management, the people who decide what goes on the air over the reporter. So it's not a very different situation from theater. So I guess, you know, right now, Charles, you started off this conversation saying there were all these statements, you know, in support of Black Lives Matter a few months ago. We are in a watershed moment. I think for the first time in the arts, there has been an awakening to the racism and discrimination that has been being practiced for many years here in Portland. I wonder, though, there is a difference between being, you know, somebody who isn't racist versus anti-racist. You know what I mean? Like having anti-racist policies as opposed to being a single individual saying, I'm not racist. So what are some of the actions that can take place in support of anti-racism and discrimination? I guess in theater, but also just in general in our society. What does it mean to be anti-racist?
Well, I imagine Fyndi's probably got some, I'd love to hear Fyndi's response to that, working with Hands Up Don't Shoot. But off the top of my head, I mean, the number one thing is like, you got an anti-racist statement. The next thing I'm looking for is a plan of action. And if you don't have a plan of action, you're wasting my time, you know, and hopefully that plan of action includes policy changes. Hopefully that plan of action could even just have a monthly dialogue with your staff or your, I mean, like just talking about the stuff alone should be something that people can do. Talking to your kids, white folks, talk to your kids, talk to your parents, talk to your families, talk to your kids about the importance of voting. So important, more than anything else. Did you have some other thoughts to add, Fyndi?
Yes,
I want to put you on the spot.
Yes, I do. Thank you. Yes. Okay, so in reference to, so how do we think anti-racist, right? And so back to the idea of humans, we are all socially conditioned to think in ideologies just in general, right? And these constructs, right? So racism, I remember learning conceptually about classism, right? About sexism, right? So when I started thinking about these ideas conceptually, I started thinking about humans differently, you know? And so I don't think that you can, when you hold these, what are those isms? I don't know what the word is. But when you hold those and you think, you use them as your main frame of thought, you have the potential to have interactions that can become oppressive to some, you know? And so I inherently believe that we have to figure out how to become one with ourselves and this earth, and we'll have a better chance of figuring out how to better take care of humans and understanding humans, right? Hold on, I was taking notes because my brain been. Where is the conflict family? Speaking to your family, it amazes me how like sometimes people like do the work, right? And I'll use and this is not the only field or industry, right? But I'll use police officers as an example. We've seen a special victims unit Law and Order episode, or like something that reference a police officer who may go back home and have domestic violence with their spouse, right? And so I lost my train of thought.
You'll get it back. You'll get it back.
Well, it sounds a lot like this one girl. I remember when the protests were going on, I know of a person on my Facebook friends group who has a father who is Black, and he's a police officer. So my father's out there. And I said, well, my father's a cop. I said, well, could you talk to your father, please, and make sure he's talking to his racist like, I was like, I want to make sure it's okay. You want to be a cop? Great. What are you doing while you're there? You know, and it's not that simple, right? Go ahead.
And so the idea of like the systemic violence, and the systemic violence it's infiltrated or filled with like racism. It's filled with misogyny and patriarchy. Like it's filled with these like isms that people embody, right? And so, and there's like, I would love to see a graph or something, or like some type of something in what I'm seeing in my head. But oh Jesus, welcome to my world, y'all.
What would you like to see happen, though? You have a lot of thought balloons up here with all the isms. What would you like to see happen with those thought balloons?
That's the work, the real human work, right? The work on yourself, and the power dynamics in this world that we live in, because that's what it is. We live in hierarchies regardless of how people want to accept it. And that's how a lot of civilizations were created, you know, on the hierarchies. And I mean, we know that by the land that we live on, you know, and it's not just this land, it's other lands as well. Like people enslaved people, or peoples took powers over other peoples. And so if we are going to be calling the shots for the peoples, we need to make sure that we're looking out for all of the peoples, and we haven't really reached that point in history yet.
Yes,
the idea so it came, so everyone knows the phrase "Make America Great Again," right? And many people were perplexed because they were like,
when has it been great?
But you know, it's also an interesting thing to talk about, and obviously it keeps coming up in conversation. But even that idea of like, we still live in America, okay? We still live in this place that was created upon certain ideologies. And honestly, I'm not a point in believing until we start deconstructing that at every little spot, from the street names to the statues to the name of the states to the acknowledgement of the land. We're gonna continuously policy, like it's deeper than just like one action. Like we're like the children and the generations are gonna continuously have this fight over our land, over our earth.
Fyndi, yes, acknowledgement. I just want to hop in real quick, because in order to move forward, you have to acknowledge that there was something done wrong. And America don't want to acknowledge that anything was done wrong. And so until we get to that point, exactly like you're saying, how can we move forward until, and to me, to answer your question, Dmae, about what are some actions, to me, what feels simple, but maybe isn't, is like, how do we create a culture of care, a culture of listening, right? So that it's not just like me and mine, but like, how do we take care of each other, right? And if we can just take simple actions like that, how does that then feed into and blow up into the bigger picture? You know, how do we, acknowledging other people, how do we try to see other people? I may not understand your experience fully based on how I grew up, based on how you grew up based on your skin color, but how can I at least acknowledge your existence?
Yeah. Tamera,
I think that's a real.
Oh, I just wanted, because Tamera hasn't had a chance to say anything.
Yeah.
I don't know. I want to know what you're thinking right now.
Sorry, I was just listening to everybody speak and taking it all in. But I agree with what Fyndi was saying. It was like, we have to change the names of these states. We have to change the names of these street names. That's something that it's both encouraging and hard pill to swallow, because that may not be something, it's a reality. It may not be something that we see in my lifetime. I won't be able to see the effects of that. But I want it to happen now. But I just have to think of what can we do now. And I think if we can take it by little bites, then it won't seem as oppressive to the racist people. I think they just think of it as, oh my God, you're gonna change my world so much, I'll never be able to function. And that's not true. It's like, we're all trying to figure out a way to function together as human beings. That's the main thing. That's the main thread through us all. We are all humans. At the end of the day, no matter your color, no matter your creed, your religion, nothing, like, we are human beings, and how do we connect as one on this earth that we were brought on in this universe? So I think it's just taking little steps, little bites, and ripping off the Band-Aid very slowly but fast. Also, it's like, you can't have the best of both worlds. Like, yeah, yeah. That's how I feel.
I was also imagining you as you're editing this film. You don't edit the whole film. You take each section and you make each section better as you proceed, and then then you're done, right? When everything is taken care of.
Right.
I was just thinking of you doing that, and what you were saying right now. It's that metaphor. That's exactly what I hope that I've been hearing what everybody's saying. Take what you can and keep working at it. Don't get overwhelmed by the big picture, because then you can't take care of everybody.
Right.
James, you had something you wanted to say.
I heard what everyone said here, and I keep thinking about identity. And, when we talk about seeing people as equals, I mean, let's be really honest about this. We're assuming that people actually care, and we're assuming that people actually want to bring people closer. And I'm the pessimist in the room. This is going to say, we're always going to have racists. We're always going to have misogynists. And I think it's more important that people become more aware of how close they are to certain people. And if you've got that racist uncle, and your uncle's still saying racist stuff at dinner, and you're not saying anything to them, in my opinion, you're just as racist as your uncle for not engaging with them, because you're allowing this to continue. There's so many people so attached to their identity. It's just like, well, I'm not racist. I didn't say you were racist because you're white. I said I have a problem with whiteness, not white people. I have a problem with white culture, because white culture is inherently racist. And if that makes you feel bad and icky inside, great. What do we do with that? Don't take it personally. Take that and do something constructive with it. Don't take ownership of that pain, because we can't use that. But what you can do is take responsibility for the fact that you're white. It's like I take responsibility for the fact that I'm male. I have male privilege, and I can take that. I can do the work. I know when to step into the room in feminist situations, and I know when I'm in the room, I know when to step up, and I know when to be quiet and wait to be called on. I think that's an ultimate challenge that people are trying to fight right now too, especially out here in these streets protesting. So just hoping for the best. I'm hoping to breathe. Yeah, go ahead, Fyndi. Sorry.
Breathe. Oh, that's on numerous layers. That's layered. Y'all both have spoke to the idea of accountability, understanding, right? And right before you start speaking, James, I was thinking about how in order to be understanding, or in Charles, everyone, in order to be understanding, I believe that you have to be willing to learn. you know? And I don't think that sometimes people are in mental spaces to be willing to learn. And honestly, I feel like it's like developmentally an issue, but that's something else. But in that same idea, there are people who just we're still obviously existing in this place, right? So best example, someone came in the other day and they were like talking about Jefferson and the statue being removed. And they were like in support of Black lives, but didn't agree with the statue being removed, which, okay, everyone's inclined to their own opinion. And so they asked for, examples as to what some type of shifting perspective, like, can you provide us with why that would be a good idea? Not exact verbiage, but let's say that. And one of my responses, well, he had slaves, and so their response was, well, that was normal then. And though that being their honesty, because that is the experience that they obviously have been living in, where, yeah, but that was normal then, right? And just the whole idea of human rights as within an existence of this nation is all over the place, right? We had 3/5 human here. We had federally recognized tribes. Like, we had not to downplay anything, but like that also, there are wars, right? Genocides of people over land. But it was normal then. And so since it was normal then, it's embedded in every part of our lives, really. And we have to continue to like chip it down, like
that word normal and throw it away, because there's no such thing. There really isn't. Yeah. And James, I was thinking also when you were saying talk to people, call it out. I don't know how you feel, but I am tired of people privately saying, oh, that was really great what you said, when you called this out, instead of calling it out themselves or saying it in the public space, and so I don't think that does any good unless people are willing to say something at the moment.
People are going to have to be brave. Yeah, people have to be brave. People are literally putting their lives, their bodies on the line, like bodies on the line. People are dying out in the streets, and it's being politicized on a daily basis. Like the kid who got stabbed in the neck defending those 2 Black girls on the train a couple years ago. I saw the guy. He's got a scar on his neck still. That terrified him, but he's still out there. That guy was still out there supporting queer rights. Out there, and so like we have to step up as best we can, and sometimes that means speaking up at that board meeting when somebody says something racist in a room full of white people, and sometimes that might mean putting your resources on the line too, because we're losing jobs out here in these streets. We're losing our lives, losing our kids. We're going to have to step up. We're going to have to be braver.
I want to speak to like the idea of complicity. I can't even talk. You know what I'm trying to say, right? Complicity, yes. Within abuse, right? Because James, as you mentioned, like people have to become brave, and the idea of like, we have to go back home and speak to our families, and how many times I could think about like, wow, people are literally going back out. We're advocating for certain things in the streets or at work. We hold the position to do this, and then we go back home and it's a whole different situation, right? Not all the time, but whatever. Or we go to the store that we always go to and it's a whole different situation. When are we not speaking up? And I think it's layered, because with PTSD, right? With trauma, with all that trauma, that if you experience that, even the response can be a whole situation, So it's layered. I just wanted to say that.
We're coming up to an hour of this conversation, which is pretty brilliant. I'd like to ask a couple questions. Feel free to answer one of them. Would you speak to what hope means? What is hope for right now? Or just any final thoughts that you have?
I can go. I'll speak to what hope means, which is interesting because that just gave me a memory of a paper that I wrote when I was a freshman in college. And my thesis was pretty much surrounding and I had evidence, the idea that like the Black culture and the Black community is suffering from a lack of hope. And I got a response from my professor, like, you know, like, got to be mindful of like what you're saying and da 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 da. But I think people, right, we're at a lack of hope, and I believe that hope is literally like finding that vibrancy within, you know. And if you can find that vibrancy within, if you can find that like enlightenment within, then that's hope, right? If you can see the light, that's hope. And keep hope alive, okay? Let's keep the people alive. I appreciate this piece, y'all. One of my favorite, and even thinking about all the different elements, right? We got the photography, and then we got the writing, we got the directing, and how all that like fits in to tell a story. That's something that I appreciate. I really appreciated there was the moment where there were like the whispers, right? And Dmae, you mentioned like it was claustrophobic, right? And so that whispers spoke to me in that idea of this claustrophobicness, because it's like we're in this space, right? We got thoughts chiming, we got a lot of information, you know, and when we're alone, some of us are the people we are inside our head, and some of us are not, you know, all the time, because you can tune in and you can tune out, right? So to get a glimpse of what this character was going through for this moment, I appreciate it. So yes, thank you.
I guess I'll go next. It's great. I'm so glad you went first, because you said something, Fyndi, that gave me hope, and it's finding that light inside. Because some people are going to say, well, I hope we solve this racism problem. I don't think that's going to happen in our lifetimes. I don't think hoping for anything to happen on election day is going to change anything as well. In my opinion, I think that's overzealous. I am going to vote, but I want to hope for something that I can actually. I want to check that's actually that I know is going to cash. So for me, I put all that in myself. You know, I keep myself strong. My partner is Black and queer, and I do what I can to hold him up. He does important social justice work. I take care of my folks that are out in the world who can't eat. I give them money. I'm hopeful I can continue to keep them alive and keep them in the game, keep them breathing. And most importantly, you said something else I want to tack on, Fyndi, is I hope that we can tell more of our own stories. You talk about storytelling, and that's ultimately what everyone in this room, as for us working in theater, I don't know what type of art you practice, but we're ultimately, in any type of art, we're trying to have a voice. We're trying to have a voice in our work out in the world, so there's more awareness. And that's what I'm hopeful for, is that we get more opportunities for folks to step up and be seen and be heard, so that we can learn more from each other and grow each other.
Hope. I guess in reference to this piece, like we came in not knowing, or we still don't know, like who will be able to view it and who it'll impact. But we know that we came together and created this piece and uplifted these people who lost their lives senselessly, and we hoped for our it's hard. I don't know. Hope is hard to have, because it's like a hard thing to have, and one thing that keeps me alive most of the time. Because it's like, if I can just make it to the next day, if I can just make it to the next hour, if I can just make it to the next minute, I'm always hopeful. I'm always grateful. So we came together to create this piece, not knowing who's going to see it, but we know that we uplifted those people's voices and their lives, and they are living on one more day, because their memory will never be lost, because this is something that is imprinted in the world of everywhere we'll go for our time being and thereafter. So hope is just trying to make it each minute, and pray for the best, I guess. Let's hope.
That was beautiful, Tamera. It was. Charles, you are the reason everybody's here. So you have the final word.
Ooh, I'm just gonna say the word hope. But something that is speaking with me as more of like a final thought is what you said, James, about bravery. And so I guess I hope that we all continue to find the bravery within ourselves, have the hard conversations with our communities and family members, but have those real conversations with ourselves, right? Like what things are we holding on to or saying are normal just because that's how it's been, right? So I'm hopeful that as long as the conversations keep happening, that's so uplifting voices is growth, and so yeah, I just hope we continue to do that. I think we do that with this piece, like Sarah said, we all came together to uplift voice, to make something happen, to shake it up. We're doing it right now. Dmae, thank you for hosting this space, and so I hope just moving forward, conversation, keep talking about it, and then do, right?
Anybody else have any final words? James,
I just hope everyone, I hope everyone gets to see the piece and actually resonates, and it resonates with everyone. I hope everyone, I hate to say enjoy it. There's going to be some sad parts of this piece, but I hope that this work strikes conversation with other folks. And on our end as artists, I hope that this gives some producers some idea of what conversations we're having now, what the urgency is of the work that we're doing now, and how we can better engage with it as producers and directors and artists.
I hope other people hold space and have conversations, because I think this piece definitely will spark that. Matter, a film theater piece written and performed by Charles Grant, is directed by James Dixon and filmed by Tamera Lyn. It's a co-production of Many Hats Collaboration and Portland Playhouse, and it will be live streamed on both manyhatscollaboration.org and portlandplayhouse.org on September 25th through October 1st. And donations are being encouraged on both of these sites for Don't Shoot PDX, or you can donate directly at don'tshootpdx.org. Charles Grant, James Dixon, Tamera Lyn of Matter, and Fyndi, Jermany. Fyndi, Jermany, a board member of Don't Shoot PDX. Thank you all for this important conversation. And I really hope that people will take so much from this and be able to share this with friends, with family, maybe not friends, even that's important too, right? So thank you.